And everybody should be in now.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Eleanor. Okay. Good evening. I'm calling this public hearing to order at 6 p.m. in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40, and the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4. The Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public hearing this evening, September 4th, 2024, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. This evening's hearings will be followed by our regular meeting, and in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online to ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission. The public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Could staff please identify themselves?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Dee Dee Hernandez with the Environment Department.
Olia Hussein with the Environmental Department.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll call the roll of present commissioners who are present. Commissioner Sullivan?
John Sullivan.
Commissioner Conan?
Anand Thiruvengadam.
Commissioner Richmond?
Alice Richmond.
Okay, we have a lean staff this evening. Okay, a few little procedural housekeeping to do here. Because of our quorum issues this evening, a couple of hearings that we're not going to open and they are notice of intent for DEP file number 006 and Boston file number 2024-028 from Lucas Environmental LLC on behalf of City Realty Group for the proposed demolition of a 3-story, 2-family building and construction of a multifamily residential building located at 184 Cowper Street in East Boston. Resource areas land subject to coastal storm flowage. Also a request for an extension to the original order of conditions issued for DEP file number 0061794 from CCR West Roxbury Apartments LLC for the proposed demolition of commercial buildings and construction of residential building or a residential building with associated stormwater infrastructure and parking located at 189 and 197 Gardner Street in West Roxbury. Resource areas are 100-foot buffer to bordering vegetated wetland, riverfront area, and waterfront area. There are also 2 notice of intent applications that the applicant needed more time to work on some information that we needed. So there will be those 2 we will open solely for the purpose of continuing. And they are notice of intent for DEP file number 0061772 and Boston file number 2021-010 DeCoulis and Company LLC on behalf of Stefco Holdings Company for the proposed demolition of an existing structure and construction of 8 housing structures located at 90 Allendale Street in West Roxbury. The resource area is a 100-foot buffer to inland bank, waterfront area, and riverfront area. The other one this evening that we're waiting for more information is a notice of intent for DEP file number 006-2004 from VHB on behalf of the Massachusetts Port Authority for the proposed improvements of the runway safety area of runway 27 located at Boston Logan International Airport in East Boston. Resource areas are land under ocean, coastal bank, coastal beach, land containing shellfish, land subject to tidal action, land subject to coastal storm flowage, 100-foot buffer to coastal beach, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank, and 100-foot buffer to salt marsh. So again, if you're here for those 2 hearings, we're just going to open them for a brief time to continue them. So with that, let's go back to the first item that we're going to open for continuance purposes only, which is the notice of intent for DEP file number 0061772 and Boston file number 2021-010. That is the one for the construction, demolition of an existing structure and construction of 8 housing units or structures located at 90 Allendale Street in West Roxbury. So with that, do I have a motion to continue this hearing?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second. All right,
Thank you.
one of
Wow.
us has got first, one of us got second.
Okay. We'll let Dee Dee figure that out. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so that carries 4-0. The other continuance, let's just get it out of the way. Notice of intent for DEP file number 006-2004. That's the runway safety area of runway 27, proposed by Massport. Could I get a motion to continue that hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so that carries 4-0. Okay, down to business. Next item on the agenda, notice of intent for DEP file number 0061999, Boston file number 2024-022 from VHB on behalf of Parcel 3 owner LLC for the proposed construction of a new building located at 232 A Street in South Boston. Resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, waterfront area, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. This has been continued from the August 7th, 2024 hearing. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
I am Stephanie Krull, VHB. I just, Chair Parker, I just wanted to note that there's a audience member with their hand raised. I didn't know if you wanted to address them.
Thank you. Mr. Parker, would you enter? I have a point of order, if you don't mind.
I just opened another hearing.
It's,
Yeah,
can I make a statement and then you can decide how to proceed?
yeah, sure.
For the record, my name's Chris Lucas. We represent 184 Cowper Street. You had mentioned you're not opening the hearing tonight. We fully understand. I just wanted to make a note and confirm with you that that hearing will be opened on September 18th for any abutters or anybody else in the audience. Would that be
Yes,
correct?
provided that we have a quorum. Yes.
Correct. Okay, thank you,
Okay,
Stephanie. Appreciate it.
Sure. So I'm Stephanie Krull from VHB, and I'm joined by some of my colleagues at VHB, as well as representatives of the proponent, Lauren Ferrando and Joe Trainer. Next slide, please. So I want to start off by just giving a quick project recap. This project is proposing to replace an existing surface parking lot with a waterfront open space and a new lab R&D building. And it will have ground floor facilities of public accommodation. It includes providing 5 times more publicly accessible open space than there is currently on the site. It also includes improvements to the Harbor Walk and South Bay Harbor Trail, an extension of a city street, and new sidewalks and streetscapes. The project will result in a 189% increase in pervious area. And the stormwater system is designed to retain the first 1.25 inches of stormwater over the site impervious areas to the maximum extent practicable as a redevelopment. And the project also includes the relocation of a 72-inch CSO pipe that's owned by BWSC to avoid building the building footprint over it. At the previous hearing on October 7th, the Commission had a few questions related to the limits of land subject to coastal storm flowage, the impacts to flood depth and velocity that the project would have, and landscaping and grading. On August 23rd, the proponent submitted supplemental information responding to all of these questions, and the slides that follow are presenting the information that's in those documents. Next slide, please. So one of the requests from the Commission was an existing conditions site plan that clearly identifies the elevation of 16.5 Boston City Base 10 NAVD 88, which is the limit of land subject to coastal storm flowage. So in addition to the full-size engineering plan, we also submitted a snippet that kind of focuses a little bit more here. You can see that the LSCSF is kind of all around. There's a high point on the site. The 4-point channel is plan left, and you can see that that is the area that is not LSCSF is kind of in the middle. Next slide. The commission asked for a flow path analysis under existing climate conditions. We had provided one that was under 2070 climate conditions, which was from our MEPA filing. And we did also include in the submitted materials the DEIR Chapter 7 that has that full analysis. But as far as current conditions go, what we explained in the memo is that FEMA uses a transect-based coastal hydraulic analysis to estimate the elevation of the base flood, but it uses a one-dimensional model of waves that kind of takes a snapshot in time. We use different modeling. It's the same modeling that was used for Suffolk Downs. It's a two-dimensional model. It calculates flood extent, depth, and velocity as the water moves over the land and then recedes. So it's a dynamic model. And according to that model, the site actually isn't currently subject to flooding during the 1% annual chance event. And so when we ran the model to show the impact that our project would have, you'll see two of the same picture because it actually won't impact flooding of adjacent properties under current conditions. And also the additional information that we submitted on August 23rd included information about future potential flooding under various build scenarios with our project being built and the other projects not being built, with some of them being built, et cetera. So there's some more information in there. Next slide. There was also a question about the species that have been selected for the landscaping. So 2 of the 11 tree species in the proposed planting schedule are non-native, and that's the honey locust and lacebark elm. These are both included in the Parks Department's list of recommended public street trees, and they were selected for this project to be consistent with the species that were chosen for the adjacent project, which is the 244 to 248 A Street project. And I know that has not been in front of you yet, but we've been coordinating throughout the project with that as well. As far as other plants, there are 2 perennial species of the 18 that were selected for understory plants that are non-native. Those are Russian sage and Veronica. They were specifically selected because they attract pollinators. They're drought tolerant and salt tolerant. They're adaptable. They kind of are part of the cohesive planting palette. They've been known to perform well in these conditions. They're only specified for the perennial garden nooks, but if the commission wishes, we'd be happy to substitute those as necessary. I also want to point out that this project is subject to Parks review prior to getting a building permit. So the Parks Department will have another crack at this. Is there a question?
No. Go ahead.
No. Okay. And then the last question was about the soils. So because of the I-90 tunnel that's below there, we are specifying lightweight fill, and it'll be used strategically to raise the grades across the site. And on top of the lightweight fill, there'll be a multi-layered engineered horticultural and planting soil. It's specifically designed to accommodate the proposed plantings. And also, any potential inundation depending where they are on the site, and also the rest of the site context. Next slide, please. So there was also a request to clarify where the line of protection is on the plan. So we submitted this grading plan and we've highlighted the line of protection. And you can see that at the edges, it will be coordinated with the City of Boston's resilient 4-point channel infrastructure project that you heard about at the last hearing. And then the last slide just shows a cross section of the open space portion of the site. So you can see that the FEMA floodplain is actually below the elevation, just below the elevation of the existing portion of the Harbor Walk. Then there's another portion of the Harbor Walk that cuts through on the diagonal, and that's elevated to 18.5 feet. And then the line of protection is a little bit further up. So I think this demonstrates how what has been called a berm is being integrated into the site between the MassDOT tunnel and grade. And that is the last slide that I have. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Okay, thank you. First issue to get out of the way, the plantings that you were talking about. Maybe we don't have our resident experts from Parks and
Mhm.
Commissioner Wilson here this evening. And you say you're going through Parks Review again. So maybe what we can do is slip in a line in the conditions that depending on park review and staff review, being informed by those two commissioners, they may be switched out. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. Are you talking about the understory plantings or the trees or
Correct.
both?
Yeah, the
Yep,
understory.
understories. Okay, great. Yep.
Okay. On the modeling, on the transect and the two-dimensional modeling. So as you know, we rely on best available data and modeling by extension. So could you just explain, I know that the transect it seems like purportedly would model a three-dimensional scenario, but it doesn't seem to, if I'm reading what you wrote correctly. And then if that's true, and then also why you think the two-dimensional model is a more accurate representation of future scenarios.
Sure. So I myself, I just want to point out that I am not a water resources engineer and I'm not a modeler. But what I do know is that the transect region, this FEMA Region 1 is the only region in the US that still uses this transect-based modeling. It's less accurate because it's only taking slices of the topography and then it interpolates in between. And so it doesn't catch necessarily any of the nuances of the topography in between. Another shortcoming is that it doesn't dynamically model the wave coming in and coming out. So there's no video that you could watch of this is how the water is acting. It's just mathematically taking a snapshot in time and modeling that particular spot on the transect. So that is what we continue to use for floodplain management purposes in Massachusetts because it models kind of the current, or actually the recent past climate conditions. So then the modeling that we used is similar to the modeling that the planning department uses for the Article 25A zoning. And so for that, they use the Boston Harbor flood risk model where they're modeling the year of 2070 with 40 inches of sea level rise. And so they only look at that future one. Then the MCFRM, actually, the Massachusetts Coast Flood Risk Model, models a slightly different scenario than the Boston Harbor flood risk model. It models 50 inches of sea level rise by 2070, and it also includes the whole coast, and there's some other improvements that it makes over the Boston Harbor flood risk model as well. And so the modeling that we use, that we've used for Suffolk Downs and we've used for other projects, integrates the inputs of the Massachusetts coast flood risk model with that higher level, lower probability event. And it propagates the waves over the landform and then back again. So there's an actual video, that we've shown especially for Suffolk Downs, where you can see how the water flows in. There's arrows, it flows in, it flows out. And so that's the more accurate modeling. It also is based on LiDAR data. So it's not using transects, it's using the actual elevations of the ground. And so that's why it is more accurate.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. That's a great explanation. I'm surprised that you are not a modeler. You sound like one. So
I've just
yeah.
done these a lot.
Yeah, apparently. Okay. So then I guess my follow-up to that is when I was reading the materials, and I'm not sure if I might not have interpreted the narrative correctly. It feels like with your explanation that the model that you used is actually more conservative and more accurate because you're taking the inputs from the Massachusetts model itself.
Right.
Is that accurate?
That is, yes. So, but the good thing about the Massachusetts Coast Flood Risk Model is that you can put in different years. So you can put in current conditions, 2030, 2050, and 2070. So we're able to model all of those different scenarios. And that's why we're used to seeing the 2070 version. That's what everybody looks at because they're interested in the future. But in this particular case, the commission was interested in the present. And so we were able to model the present conditions and show that the site is actually above the elevation of the 1% annual chance event as this is modeled.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I won't ask you the same questions. I know you use the same model in another application. I don't know if it's you're presenting or not. So thank you. And again, the reason for the questions are, by reviewing this project and issuing, an order of conditions, we're in essence accepting your model as reliable data. And I think you explained it well. Okay, Elena, do you have anything?
We don't have anything to add on this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, Stephanie, that was great explanation, and we use the 2D modeling also both in our coastal work and our future inland flooding for all the reasons you said, but you said it much better than I would ever try to. So I just want to let you know. Did you mention that you're going to extend a public way? Did I hear you say that in the first?
That's right,
couple of
Necco
lines?
Street.
Necco Street.
Yeah,
And has that gone before the public improvement yet?
I don't think so. This filing, this NOI is actually quite early in the process just because of Chapter 91. So typically this would have been heard at a later stage closer to actual construction and closer to the other approvals that we'll need. I don't know if Howard or John, if you guys are on, if you have any estimate of when that would happen.
It's going to be a ways out, and it's a planned future extension of NECO that would continue further south of the project once the land south of us is raised to meet our elevations. So we'll be setting it to the city standards, matching what abutters are doing, so it could be continued. I'd imagine we're probably a year out from PIC.
Yeah, all right. I hadn't heard about it yet, that's all. And the final one I had was, did you finally decide that the sewer relocation will be supported by piles? Did we ever conclude that?
We haven't reached that conclusion, Commissioner Sullivan. We have done geotechnical testing, which may have not have made its way up to your desk at the commission yet, but we have shared those findings with your BWC staff. We've encountered a number of remnant foundations under the proposed alignment, which might provide equivalent support and at the same time present challenges for pile supports, but we haven't concluded that discussion yet.
All right, yeah, that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. I just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Commissioner Khanna?
Thank you, Chair Parker. What level would the water get up to in the 2070 1% exceedance probability scenario?
So I believe it is 18.5 or 19.5? Sorry. It's 18.5 because the sea level rise design flood elevation is 19.5.
I see. So it would come, there is a terraced, you talked about Chapter 91, right? So I appreciate that. So you're doing this a little bit early in the process because of Chapter 91. And it's last time we talked about this too. The terraced approach to access to waterfront for the public means that part of that will be underwater in the 2071% scenario, and likely before that if there is a more acute flooding. That means the public access to waterfront gets cut off at some point, right? I'm just trying to work out where that is.
So temporarily, so I don't know, Elena or Dee Dee, if you're able to go backwards in the slides just to that very last slide, the cross section. Right, so you can see the harbor walk is at elevation 18.5 here.
Right,
So
yeah.
yeah, so this would be subject to inundation in the event that in the 1% annual chance event in 2070 with 40 inches of sea level rise. And you have to keep in mind that 40 inches of sea level rise on its own has a certain likelihood of occurrence. So there are like multiple probabilities here. But yes,
Mhm.
it would during a storm event, much as today, you might anticipate portions of the harbor walk periodically being inundated during a 1% annual chance event. That would happen here. And so it's going to be designed to be recoverable. So that's why the specific plantings were chosen to be salt tolerant and adaptable. But it could, periodically for a short time be inundated and then be available for use again when the storm is over.
So it's sort of like tide coming in and going out, the flooding will come
Well,
in
it's
and
not
go out.
right. Yeah, it's not a tide, but it is a flood event during a big storm in a case where nobody would be outside anyway. So, you really
Hopefully.
shouldn't be walking around on the waterfront in that type of event, but yes.
Mhm. So the access will still be there, but not all the way up to where we see the water now. Right.
Well, can you go back one more slide, Dee Dee or Elena, sorry. So you can see there's sort of this triangle plan left that is not protected. And the reason for that is because of the below grade infrastructure and what is constraining the project site on to the north and south of, where there's that pump house. Is that the right thing? That is, it's
that's right.
to the north of the site right now. And so it's not possible to carry the harbor walk straight across the front of the channel because of that and because of other things going on and other access things that are needed. And so the city's Resilient 4-Point Channel Infrastructure Project does also show this kind of jog in the harbor walk here. And so, the line of protection can't be seaward of that area.
I see.
So that's why it's at this location where it's shown.
Where's the pump house located?
So it's not on this plan, but right above the word grading plan off of the site, it would be right up there.
I see. Okay. Thank you. That's all check, Walter.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond.
Yeah, first of all, I really would like to thank them. This has answered not only my questions, but the last slide, the cross-section made me understand the berm. So I think that was really very helpful and useful. And I also just want to make a comment about the selected non-native trees and plants. I don't know as much perhaps as others on the commission, but I am familiar with those 4 that you've chosen, and I think those were very good choices. So I don't have any questions. Thank you for doing this, and particularly thank you for the cross-section slide.
Great, thank you. Okay, Elena, I don't see any hands up. Do you, or did you get any emails?
Nope, I'm not seeing any hands either, and we have not received anything in the inbox.
Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing and issue an order of conditions with a special condition regarding the, I think it was 2 plantings in the understory. And Elena, you know what I was getting at. Pending, maybe you could check in with pending Parks Review, and maybe you could check in with Commissioners Wilson and Linay.
So moved.
Sorry, Chair Parker, just wanted to confirm, and my apologies, I had missed a message in the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I believe they have their hand up now.
Let me look at the question. Did you want to, I can't tell what the name is. Did you want to speak, or do you want your comment read? Patrick. Okay, awesome presentation. I live in the neighborhood and I'm excited for these parking lots to have some development. Exclamation. Seems like the process is taking longer than other neighborhoods. Can it get started soon? It would be really beneficial to the city, exclamation point. Okay. This is the end of our process. As Stephanie pointed out, I think there's other concurrent processes that don't know what the time frame is on that, but you can certainly check with the proponent. Thank you. Okay. So with that, do we have a
Welcome.
second to the motion?
Second,
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan,
aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, the next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 006/2001 and Boston file number 2024-024 from 230 Friend Street LLC for the proposed demolition of an existing building and the construction of a new 7-story mixed-use building located at 230 Friend Street in the West End. Resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. This was continued from the August 21st, 24 hearing. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
So I'm actually here again. Hello,
Okay.
Stephanie Krull from VHB. I believe the other folks are on the call. Hopefully.
Yes, we are.
Oh,
Hi.
there's Gray. Okay, great. Do you want to introduce yourself, Gray?
Hi, I'm the owner of the property. My name is Gray McGletchy, and I'm here with my associate, Jake Doherty.
Okay. Okay, Stephanie, it's all yours.
All right, next slide, please. So at the previous hearing, the commission requested some additional information, and that was submitted to staff on August 28th. And again, these slides present the responses to the commission's comments. They were related to the Groundwater Conservation Overlay District, stormwater management, the floodplain, climate resilience, and potential impacts on abutters. Next slide, please. Just a very quick recap. This project includes the demolition of an existing 2-story building, which is the picture on the left, and it will be replaced by a new 7-story mixed-use residential and commercial building, which is shown on the right. This is a 0 lot line parcel. Next slide. The project site is in fact within the GCOD, and the proponent received a letter from Boston Water and Sewer dated July 26, 2023, confirming that the project meets the GCOD requirements. And that was also submitted with the NOI. Next slide. Under both current and proposed conditions, the building occupies the entirety of the project site, so it's 100% impervious. The NOI included a stormwater report checklist. It indicates that as a redevelopment, the project meets the Massachusetts stormwater standards to the maximum extent practicable, and it identifies some of the ways that the stormwater standards are met. Next slide. So the project is within the in the floodplain according to the currently effective flood insurance rate map. It indicates that the site is within an AO zone, which is different than an AE zone. Here, it just indicates that the flood depth is 1 foot above the grade. So that means that there's 1% annual chance that there will be a flooding at this depth. This equates to a base flood elevation of around 10 NAVD 88, depending on where you take the average elevation of grade in front of the site. And the project site's actually elevated just slightly higher than that at 10.2 feet. So it's just really a matter of inches. Next slide, please. And in the last project, we just talked about the differences in modeling. According to the Massachusetts Coast Flood Risk Model, this site is actually not subject to flooding currently, but it will be in 2050 when it will be during the 1% annual chance event, it would be subject to about a half a foot of flooding. And then barring the implementation of district scale flood protection measures around the TD Garden and the North End, by 2070, the project site would be subject to flooding. During the 1% annual chance flood event up to a depth of about 3 feet. Next slide. So this is from the city's zoning viewer, and it provides the elevation of the 1% annual chance flood in 2070 with 40 inches of sea level rise. and it identifies it as 18 feet BCB, which is 11.5 feet NAVD 88. And then according to Article 25A, the Coastal Flood Resilience Overlay District, the sea level rise design flood elevation for non-residential buildings, non-residential portions of buildings is 1 foot higher. So that is 12.5 NAVD 88, and the project is designed to comply with Article 25. Next slide, please. And I know that this next slide is really hard to see at this scale, but this was submitted as part of the additional information. This was a stamped, actually, and part of this was, I think this figure was actually submitted with the NOI, but it shows the finished floor elevation of the building's non-residential space at elevation 12.5. The lowest elevation of the residential space is much higher at elevation 22, NAVD 88 or 28.5, Boston City base. However, there is a portion that is at grade. So in order to meet the existing exterior grade and provide flush ADA compliant entryways, some of the elements are at the sidewalk level. That's the 10.2 NAVD 88, and that would be the exterior doors on the front facade, the adjacent vestibule, the lobby, and the bottom of the elevator. The lobby stair, the sprinkler room, the electrical room, the egress hallway, an ADA accessible bathroom and retail space are all elevated to the sea level rise design flood elevation of 12.5. And then the elevator machine room is actually located on the roof. Next slide, please. So as far as it relates to abutters, the building is going to be in the same footprint that it is today. It won't have any impact on the abutters. It will match the facade of the adjacent buildings. There's no new features that are being introduced that would change any existing flow path direction or elevation or velocity. And so there will actually be no impact on LSCSF as a result of the project. And that is all I have.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Gray, I think you understand now, if I wasn't clear enough at the last hearing, what we're looking for as far as the elevation. So thank you very much for providing those. The only question I have, Stephanie, is regarding the performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage. We generally, when we see these sites, we like to see redevelop sites like this. We like to see an improvement regarding infiltration or some greenery or, you know, a green roof, light colored materials for the roof. Is one example we've used in the past. And I understand that this is a constrained site. We had one in Four Point Channel not that long ago, and asking the same question. And, you know, the comment was, well, this is all the room we have. And, you know, that wasn't a satisfactory response. You know, and we came to a solution where we got some greening of the site there. So I am wondering if you have thought of anything you can do with this site, whether it be roofing materials, any sort of outdoor features on the roof, or a street tree somewhere. I know that's difficult because I'm not even sure if there's an opportunity for a street tree there, but I think you know where I'm going. So is there anything you can think of that can be done here?
Sure. Yeah. So at the site level, there are no street trees on the street. They don't accommodate them. We are providing additional recharge as part of the compliance with groundwater overlay. And then I'll turn it over to Gray and Jake to talk about the roof.
Yeah, so currently there is no recharge system. So all the stormwater is going right back into the storm system or the sanitary. I'm not even sure which one it goes into. But we're also having a white TPO roof instead of the black EPDM. And I think there's potential for some roof deck activity and maybe some plantings up there. I'm not sure what they would be, but there's definitely some opportunity for that.
Okay, so would you mind if we would like to put, and I apologize, I meant to ask the recharge system question first, whether there was an existing one or this was something new. So that's great. So in the order of conditions, I think we would put in something regarding light colored roofing materials and the consideration of if you improve the roof or any outdoor decking to include vegetation. And at that point, file something with staff showing what you're putting up there. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That's reasonable. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, Eleanor, what do you have on this?
We don't have anything to add on this, and I'll make sure to add that condition as well before the permit's issued.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
I don't have anything. I was just curious when this might start, what's your projected start on this?
ASAP. So hopefully within the next, month.
Oh, okay. All right, that's all I had.
Okay. Commissioner Conan?
What would be the duration of the project?
Overall, major construction is a 12-month schedule. So from the demolition to basically punch list is about 12 months. And then, C of O, punch list sometimes drags on a little bit. So it might be 14 to 16 months before it's totally done.
So if it starts next month, you'll just kind of go through the winter and be done with summer or fall next year.
Yes.
I see. And any specific plans for any winter storms?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on the winter condition program right now because we were hoping to get this done a little sooner. But we're hoping to get it largely, the building largely up by the end of December. And, if we have some light winters like we have in the last couple, I think we'll be okay.
Thank you. That's all, Chair Parker.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ritchie?
Yeah, I'm still unhappy about the exits on the building. I get that the apartments themselves or whatever will be residential are at a level which is appropriate given sea level rise and the like. But I'm still concerned about how people get out of that building in the event of a flood. And I'm particularly concerned about it because even now it seems that getting out of that building is problematic if there is a storm that raises the water above, we're projecting, 2070 and all the rest of this, but, it does seem like some things are going faster than predicted. And so I'm just interested in how you're going to describe to people who are living in that building, how they get out of it in the event of a flood.
Well, I think sort of as Stephanie had said before, if there's a major flood situation happening, people aren't going to be coming in and out during that time frame. And so it's a short time frame when the flood exists. I don't know how many hours, but I think people would take into precaution whether they want to be there during the storm or whether they want to vacate the premises before the storm.
But it's going to be a residence, right? I mean, above that, the first floor, as I understand your drawings, apartments, right?
Yes.
So that's the problem I'm having, and I appreciate that you guys have done, a lot of work to answer the questions that we all had. But, if somebody is in their own home, you're not expecting them, I don't think, to evacuate that. Where are they going?
I think it's similar to, places that experience hurricanes all the time. There are instances where you would stay put and instances where you would evacuate, even if it's your home. And, you know, we would imagine that there'd be coordination. It wouldn't be a surprise that this storm is happening. There would be, you know, probably several days' notice. I think what is more important, though, is that if you look at the sea level rise viewer, you realize how much of Boston would be inundated. So even if they could get out of the building, they would then be in the street where there would be a lot of flooding. So the real answer is, of course, that we need all the district scale flood protection measures that are proposed in Climate Ready Boston to prevent this from happening. And, you know, there is time, as I showed you, even by 2050, this site would only be subject to like maybe half a foot of flooding, which wouldn't actually, you know, this building still wouldn't be in the floodplain by 2050. So we're really hoping that, or not just hoping, but working toward getting these flood protection measures in place so that areas like this don't ever experience the flooding.
And what is the useful life expectancy of this building?
Oh, I'd say it's hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years, okay. Yeah, I mean, you know, and I appreciate what you're saying about hurricanes. And I guess my problem is that when that, not perhaps that particular street, but when that area of Boston was flooded, badly flooded a couple of years ago, I'm not sure that anybody had any idea it was going to be as bad as it was. It was sort of a surprise. So, you know, you've heard, well, perhaps you haven't heard this, but my colleagues have heard me on this subject before. You know, I'm just very concerned about approving things that in a building that's going to be presumably there for a long time, you know, and in worrying about how you get tenants out of that building that is going to be underwater. And so I appreciate everything you've said. And I know you're wanting this project to go forward. And, you know, I just have this concern. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Richmond.
I would just want to make a comment on this. The city and the Commonwealth have a huge stake in protecting the entire city. And this Climate Ready Boston and other things that have been proposed have to be built or else we have to abandon the city. So I'm not worried about one residential apartment. We take out that MBTA portals. If we take out the steam system because they flood, we take out all the electricity, we got bigger problems than just people evacuating. Shelter in place is a wonderful thing. It's done all around the country and thousands of people live because they chill out for about 6 hours as the tide comes in and then the tide goes out. So I just say that it's incumbent on the public sector to do their thing and protect and build what they've proposed and let the residentials and the private guys build what they propose. We just modify and watch each other and get going.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Richmond, one other point regarding the shelter in place. I understand your concerns. If we were looking at, let's say, a ranch house in a flood zone where it was possible that like in a Hurricane Katrina type situation, that there would be nowhere you couldn't go high enough to escape the floodwaters. You know, we all saw those tragic pictures. In this case, I think this is functionally different. We're looking at a 7-story building, so I think there's ample room if we had a catastrophic flood like that for people to safely shelter in place. They'd all have to get cozy with each other, maybe. Well, hopefully not. It wouldn't reach that high, but if they did, they'd have to get a little cozy with each other on higher floors. So Alice, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Do I have my hand up?
No, Alice Brown.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. You're Commissioner Richmond.
Right, right. That's who I am.
Okay. Alice, you're muted. Well, no, you're not muted.
I am muted. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Parker. I want to note and sort of second what Commissioner Sullivan said about, the city preparing in general. and also add that many projects are permitted having deployables to prevent interior flooding. But those buildings actually have to be evacuated in order for the deployables to be deployed, because emergency folks cannot get in to rescue people when they're fully deployed. So there's a lot of precedence for how these different projects might either respond to emergencies that are being developed by our Office of Emergency Management. And much like the previous project that we heard from, if there's a need for further updates from the coastal resilience team, I'm sure they'd be happy to come talk about that in the future.
Great. Thank you. And also an opportunity, since you bring up deployables, I did receive an email today that on September 27th of this month, the city will be hosting its inaugural Boston Deployable Day at Faneuil Hall from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So Commissioner Richmond, maybe you and I could go down there and grab lunch and look at the latest technology and deployables. Maybe that will help you breathe a little easier.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Fantastic. Just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment, please raise your hand or type in the chat the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. We can wait a second here to see if we have any hands raised. Any emails, Elena, in the meantime?
No emails, and also not seeing hands raised and nothing in the chat either.
Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing and issue the order of conditions with the special condition regarding the light covered roof materials and the consultation with staff should the roof be improved for, I guess, decks. I was going to call it decking. Could I have that motion?
So moved.
We have a second.
Well, second, with the note of appreciation of Commissioner Richmond's caution here, and also point of evidence that at least one development that was done with permit and got flooded later simply said, we did what the government asked us to do. So none of this should convey any sense of us having complete control or promising or committing to protect the entire city or region.
Okay, noted. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
So I know, Chair Parker, that you just like a yes or no. And so here's where I am. I was going to vote either no or abstain, but if I do that, then what happens to the,
Majority vote.
it's a majority vote. Okay, so with all due respect to Commissioner Sullivan and to Ms. Brown, I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to vote aye. So the motion carries 3-1 with 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 006-2005 in Boston file number 2024-027 from Niche Engineering on behalf of the Arnold Arboretum of Harvard University for the proposed redevelopment of the Walter Street Gate entrance and the restoration of cobblestone located at the corner of Walter and Bussey Streets in Jamaica Plain. Resource areas are 25-foot waterfront area, 25-foot riverfront area, 100-foot buffer to BVW, and 100-foot buffer to bank. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
I am
Jessica Walla with, oh, sorry.
My name's Danny Schisler. I'm head of operations at the Arnold Arboretum of Harvard University, and I'm joined by Jess. Jess, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Jessica Walla with Niche Engineering, the project manager on the civil side.
And we're also joined by Dom Malek-Heyman. I think Dom is here as well from Michael Van Valkenburg Associates, our landscape architect for the project.
Fantastic. Okay, who's starting off?
I will start off. Thank you. So first, I'd like to give an overview of what we're trying to accomplish at one of our historic entrances to the Arboretum at the intersection of Walter Street and Bussey Street. Next slide, please. So this is part of a larger project to renovate 5 of our historic entrances as part of an even larger initiative to improve green space access and equity, multimodal transportation, and just greening of some paved over and areas that have kind of fallen into disrepair over the years. So I won't go through all of our project goals, but this is really about improving accessibility at these entrances, all of which serve a combination of environmental justice neighborhoods, public health institutions, and some of which are also adjacent to city and state right-of-way improvement projects. We're also looking to really improve landscaping, restore the historic architecture of several of the Olmsted gates that have kind of gone into disrepair over the years, and to really just create a more welcoming and equitable experience for all of our visitors. Next slide, please. So this is just a shot showing the 5 entrances we're looking to renovate. We're basically doing this at a pace of 1 per year. We started with the Poplar Gate entrance. It's currently under renovation right now. Washington Street is slated for next year, and then Walter Street we would be looking to construct starting in 2026. So we're a little ahead of the ball here, but we wanted to make sure that we are going through a robust approval process here with the Concom. It's important to note that with the Walter Street entrance, the one we're seeking to get approval for tonight, the vast majority of the land here is owned by the Boston Parks Department and is managed by Harvard through our long-term indenture, essentially for 2,000 years. There is a sliver of right-of-way as well, and we have gone through our PIC approval process already. We've also had Boston Parks Department review at several design milestones, and certainly at the permitting level that you're seeing tonight. Next slide, please. And that's just showing that we're looking at Walter Street tonight. Next slide. So just a few other brief tidbits about what we're trying to accomplish. We're really looking back in history towards Friedrich Law Olmsted's design of the Arboretum 150 years ago, looking to restore some of the curvature and kind of the openness of these carriage gates that are original to the Arboretum. And much of that feeling has been lost. Many of our gates are closed, some of them welded shut, including the Walter Street gate that we'll be looking at tonight. We are hoping to essentially reopen those gates to the public for the first time in decades. Next slide. So we went through a very robust procurement process that led us to our excellent design team. This is Michael Van Valkenburg Associates' concept for how to improve these entrances by thinking of them as kind of multifunctional spaces where people can gather at the bottom, arriving from all forms of transportation, can connect with their loved ones and other visitors, and then embark into the landscape to enjoy the Arboretum. Next slide. And the design process has been, I think, nearly a 2-year-long design process. We've had multiple open houses and received community feedback during those open houses, and with online and in-person surveys. We've had multiple listening sessions and permitting and approval sessions with the agencies you see listed there, and many more as well. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial shot of Walter Street Gate today. So you have to use your imagination to envision this as a gate that's open to horse-drawn carriages and pedestrians and cyclists coming in to the Arboretum along a macadamized road, not a paved parking lot. And the entrance flare would have really invited vehicles and visitors into the Arboretum. Today, it serves as kind of a makeshift parking lot. That gate is welded shut. There's a curb in front of it that prevents stormwater from entering the Arboretum. And it's a hot paved area that's pretty much inaccessible to anyone who's entering by wheelchair or has mobility challenges. I'll also note that with the recent construction of the Faulkner Hospital, this has become contractor parking, and it has been for the last year. Next slide. This is an aerial view. Sorry, it just appears a little wonky here, but the labels, but this is an aerial view of the entrance area. So we're looking to improve not just that paved area that serves as a parking lot, but the gravel pathway into the Arboretum. We're looking to realign that to be more in line with Olmsted's original design. So add some curvature to that, restore the historic cobblestone gutters that are actually buried right now under the soil, and add some visitor amenities as well. And this shows you the that entrance with respect to the resource areas. It's important to note that Bussey Brook flows under Walter Street in a large culvert and then enters the Arboretum where you see that dashed line begin. Next slide. And here's a view of what we're hoping to accomplish. This is our concept view showing that parking lot area greened with a planting bed of ginkgo biloba to speak to the ginkgos that you find further in along this pathway. Looking to add seating areas both at that outer entrance area and then along the crushed stone pathway with views into the conifer collection. If you've been there before, you know it's one of the most breathtaking views in the Arboretum. We'll look to maintain maintenance vehicle access through the Bussey Gate, and we'll have a bike repair and parking station, as well as trash and recycling receptacles just within the Bussey Street entrance. Next slide. And just quickly, some renderings of what we could expect after this entrance is constructed and established. Right now, this is the view of the entrance from across the street in the Weld Hill property, which is one of our buildings. It's also open to the public. Next slide. And you'll see what we're hoping to accomplish here, which is to create a much more open and welcoming entrance from both sides, from the intersection side and from the Walter Street side. Important to note that right behind you is the Hebrew Senior Rehab Center. Right up the street is the Faulkner Hospital. You have the Sophia Snow Center as well. So lots of folks visiting from those institutions would be, or from those facilities would be welcomed in through this new entrance. Next. And you can just proceed to the next slide to show the proposed view of the gate, which is currently welded shut, as I mentioned before. So primary access will be through the main gates, which will be restored offsite and then reinstalled on the pillars, which will be reconstructed. The cobblestone gutters, which are actually functional and convey stormwater, will be restored. We'll have new planting areas on both sides of the walkways into the Arboretum. Next slide. And lastly, this is the view out right now of, of the rehab building, not the prettiest building to look at as you're exiting, along with the parking lot. Next slide will show you the proposed view, which aligns this walkway with the Weld Hill property so that people are directed towards another section of the Arboretum that they can continue their journey and really have these kind of treed areas to help greatly improve view sheds, add some shade and reduce heat island effect, and add some groundwater recharge. And now I'm going to turn things over to Jess, who's going to explain the engineering.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. So as Dan described, where we have the Bussey Brook. So associated with the Bussey Brook, we have the 25-foot riverfront area, offset from that, the 25-foot waterfront area, and then 100-foot buffer to brook and bank, which are very much aligned because there is very little actual wetlands to the bank. So if we want to go next slide. And we're just rehighlighting what Danny has here, that existing riverfront and 50-foot waterfront area is largely compacted soils and not really operating, and that will be replaced with these improved added plantings and added vegetation and a meadow shrub mix. Next slide. And just more examples of what we're looking at, where it's been very degraded in that footpath over time. So the pervious areas are not really operating to their full function. Next slide. So here what we have in the existing conditions is all of the existing impervious area and landscape area. And we delineated the difference between the pedestrian only gravel path in the lighter gray, and then the darker gray is actually the vehicular pavement. And in the existing conditions, that vehicular pavement is picked up by a catch basin that goes out to the drain line in Walter and then connects to the culvert that outlets to Bussy Brook. And then next slide. This shows the proposed conditions. So we're significantly reducing the pavement. All that light gray is the gravel path, compacted gravel, and that gray area now, as Danny had described, will no longer be vehicular. It'll be pedestrian only, but it will be a exposed aggregate concrete. So it will be impervious out by the ginkgo tree grove. Next slide. In this side here, what we're showing is just the area within the riverfront area, 25-foot, that is previously impervious that we're converting to landscape. That's in green. And then there's a small added bit of exposed ag concrete and cobble swale in brown that will become impervious. You can see it's a large net decrease in impervious area within the riverfront area. Next slide. And this is our utility plan, just to highlight, this is very much a LID practice. We're reducing impervious area, so we don't have any specific subsurface systems. But what we're doing is greening the site and very much improving the actual operation of the vegetated site. So right now what we're looking at was degraded soil or compacted kind of exposed soil. We'll be replacing that with shrub, meadow, additional trees, so that material will actually be able to absorb rainwater. So we think it'll improve the function of the brook, slow water, and have more infiltrative capacity and filter it a bit before it enters the brook. And then in that west of the entrance, we'll have a area drain that'll just collect any runoff and connect it into that existing system that outlets to the Bussy Brook. Just to touch on utilities, I'm sure Commissioner Sullivan, you may be familiar with this. We've worked closely with BWSC and Phil Rock and Peter Salvatore with all of these existing, there's sewer and water lines that go through here. So we're in very close coordination with them on that. And think we're in a good place where it's currently in review with Phil, but we have met with them a number of times. I think we're all happy with the improvements that BWSC is doing and Arboretum is doing. Next slide. In the interest of time, I don't have to go through these, but basically as a redevelopment project, we're just meeting the stormwater management standards for water quality and annual recharge to the maximum extent. Next slide.
That's
We're
okay.
improving the water. Yeah.
We saw this. You don't need to go over all that.
Okay, next slide then. I think the rest is very, this is just the riverfront area, which I'm happy to go into the numbers, but we can just skip through this right now. Yep, same here. And then that's all. So I'm happy to dig into those riverfront area numbers if we want to, that were in the notice of intent.
Don't mind. I didn't mean to. I was just going through the stormwater.
Oh,
okay. You just go over that riverfront area. That would be great.
So 2 slides back then.
There we go. Thank you.
So we'll be reducing, we looked at the riverfront area as the whole parcel. So this is a small portion of that parcel. And we're altering about 3.3% of the riverfront area within the parcel, riverfront area to Bussy Brook as it travels through the Arboretum. And we're reducing impervious area within that riverfront area by about 2,300 square feet, which is about 1+% of the total riverfront area. But the existing degraded area within the parcel does not exceed 10%. It's about 5%. And so after this project, it'll be 3.8%.
Great. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. I don't really have any questions on this. I think this is great. Thank you. Hope this moves along really quickly, Danny. Elena, what do you have on this?
I had a sort of quick note regarding housekeeping and conditions, but I think that, Danny, I apologize, I hadn't responded to your email from an hour ago, but regarding the questions about the conditions that you did have, I think out of the 3 questions, 2 of them are clear to me, and one of them was one that I wanted to pose to the commission, which is the question of whether pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers not being used within 100 feet of a wetland resource area could be shifted slightly. So I think the question is, would it be possible for commission staff to approve situations that may require the use of inorganic fertilizer within the 100-foot buffer? And that was something that I was hoping to get the commission's input on.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, in the past, that's how we've handled it. When the plans for the application were still up in the air.
That sounds good. So I can make sure that that's reflected in the conditions. And Danny, I can follow up with you probably tomorrow with the answers to the other questions that you had.
Terrific. Thank you, Elena.
Okay, so given that, it sounds like we're not ready to issue the order of conditions tonight. You still have a couple questions, Danny?
I sent a few questions to Elena at the last minute. Sorry, I was waiting to get some feedback from our horticulture team. So, once we have some clarity on those.
So I think, yeah, the question regarding the ability for the Arboretum to plant plants that are not native, but are also not invasive, I think that is fine with us as commission staff, to clarify. And then I can provide you with the standards of how to properly dispose of any plant material. So those are things that I can sort of send over your way. And then the only question I had was whether the commission will be comfortable with a case-by-case sort of assessment of any inorganic fertilizers.
Yeah, no, I think that's appropriate. As I said before, we've done that before. I think we've done it down, oh, I'm blanking. So where they have the regatta, it's terrible. Soldiers Field Road, that area there.
Great, so I can look to that. So yeah.
Yep. I mean, we have a plan in place with them now, but for about 5 or 6 years, it was they would check in with staff yearly or annually to let them know what their plans were, and they would develop something in conjunction with each other.
So, and if I could just explain a little further, Elena, this would be situations like a knotweed outbreak where we would want to work with you and find the best permissible treatment of something that would be super aggressive in a wetland area. We don't often use herbicides, in the buffer zones. So, but we just wanted to make sure that this wouldn't totally preclude the use of inorganic herbicides, since those areas tend to attract very aggressive invasive species.
Chair Parker, I can look to those other projects to mirror the language if that's included in the motion.
Yeah, and they'll say that basically that opponent will check in with staff before they undertake any large scale treatment within the buffer zone. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I'm aware of the proposed sewer work water and sewer wants to do on a pipe it owns and some waterworks. Is it the intent that this NOI will, in the order conditions, will cover the Boston Water Sewers work to be done in conjunction with this work as we have in the Rossendale wetlands and the Matterhunt Woods? I guess that's to Eleanor or to Danny. I mean, we have done improvements to existing utilities in conjunction with somebody getting an NOI to do their work. So in the Rossendale wetlands, we did lining of sewers, and Matterhunt Woods, we did repair and lining of sewers. All worked well, following all the conditions. Is that being proposed here, or I'm a bit confused? Or do we have to go get our own order of conditions at some point?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner Sullivan. That has not been discussed with BWSC. And Jess, would you be willing to just maybe walk through high level what BWSC was going to
Yes.
do?
Yes, if we could go back to the utility plan, maybe 6 slides back. Yeah, John, that was not specifically discussed. I can go back to my notes. I'm wondering because it's lining work and utility work in the roadway will be replaced as is. It's exempt under the state wetlands protection, but it sounds like in the past, I know often.
Right, and it is, and because it's maintenance work,
Right.
not reconstruction. Although I thought they were relocating the water pipe, I wasn't sure.
Yes, we are, or BWC is going to be. So there's.
Yeah, no, I got that. So it's a question, I guess, to the commissioners and what your intent was or what was going on. I just know they were doing it. So we can, if we're not going to be finalizing this tonight, we can take a look, and by next time we meet, we can figure this out. I'm just throwing that as an open question.
Okay,
That was
so
one thing. The other thing.
yeah, let's,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So let's talk about that a little bit. I think we were at the point where we were going to issue the order of conditions this evening with the revisions or the notes that Elena has. So just to be clear, how would what you just described, how would that change the order of conditions? What would we need to put in the OOC?
You really don't have to do anything. We have to follow whatever the order of condition says. Just as they're going to be excavating something, we would have to follow it.
Okay.
Everything that is required to protect the resource, we would have to follow. It's just we wouldn't have to file another one. We would do it in conjunction with this work, and we've done it. At least I know the Rosendale wetlands, we did it, and I know the Matterhunt Woods, which is very recent. We just got through doing it.
Yep. Yeah, so I don't see that as any different than hiring a private contractor. They
Right.
get the order of conditions and they follow the order of conditions. And I think we have a condition in our order of conditions that the order of conditions is given to the GCs or anybody who's working on the site. So I think that covers what you're saying.
Okay. And so maybe I'm asking the Arboretum, do you have any issue with that?
We do not, but just so that I don't think we do, but let me just make sure I understand this. We would basically share the order of conditions with BWSC, and you guys would just uphold those standards as you.
I'm just trying to be open with this. I don't want to be throwing any fast ones. It's,
hey, you know, if it saves you guys time and energy, John, I am all for it, honestly.
right. The other point that I want to bring up, I know that the culvert that goes underneath the roadway that carries the Bussy Brook and goes on your property is a stone-based brook. It appears to be in great shape. We've got a TV tape of it. What has come up in question is who owns it. And if you recall at your Arboway entrance, we had a failure of the Goldsmith Brook that went through your Arboway entrance. And we all concluded at the end of the day, I think it was Boston Parks, owns the culvert, the brook part that's under their property. As you mentioned, you've got it for another 2,000 years. So we can't wait 2,000 years to get this repaired. I'm just wondering, have you, with your civil engineers, looked at that and said, we're willing to take a chance, it looks in good shape, we'll make the improvements and pray like hell? Or what? Maybe that's a question for your civil Jess to answer.
When we talked about it, so our work above the culvert is really just replacing hardscape with trees. And I'm not remembering the exact details, but we were talking about the depth of the roots of those ginkgos compared to the known depth of the top of that stone culvert. And it was an issue. And this was actually mostly discussed. We were working with BWSC with Peter because Dee, would it be possible to go back a few slides to where we have the proposed utility plan? This one, yeah, so thank you. The water line there in gray, that's going to be relocated into the street and it will be relocated. That work will happen above the stone culvert. And I'm sorry, I'm interrupting myself, but Danny, didn't you recently find some documentation that it was actually BWSC owned?
Yes, actually, John, I'll flip you the email, but I, on a whim, asked the DCR if they knew, because they also are, as I understand it, trying to going through Concom process for their Center and Walter intersection renovation. So I asked them if
Right.
they knew who owned the culvert. They said all signs point to BWSC. So I'm happy to share that with you.
Well, yeah, well, this isn't a Ouija board. We need documentation.
I didn't pry any further than that.
I know.
I know it's not Harvard,
No,
I'll tell you that.
Well, it wasn't Harvard for the Goldsmith Brook, but the Parks Department picked it up. I'm just throwing that out there. Just look at it. It's in good shape. I don't have a problem. We've been able to convince, we've got several brooks, Canterbury Brook crossing into Morton Street, crossing on American Legion Highway. We've determined that that belongs to Public Works Department. It does not belong to us. So I'm just trying to be open with this thing. We can continue this. Worst case is we can pass this. You're not doing the work for 2 years. We need to come in and do an amendment. We can do an amendment just on the culvert. I just saying we need to solve this problem once and for all and figure out who owns the thing. Because you know us, we like not owning anything. It's really a positive way to go about business. So you can do the repairs. So I'm just throwing that out. If we're gonna go for the order conditions, I wouldn't mind doing it, because if we find there's a change, we can come for an amendment, because you're not gonna be here for a year.
That sounds great.
Okay. Okay, so based on that, there are no other changes to the order of conditions. This is a separate issue.
Right, it's a separate issue. I'm just bringing it up since I got them now.
Understood.
And we just need to solve this thing. And if it turns out that it is theirs and they feel like replacing it, I'm not saying even if it was the Parks Department property, because it's in on their property,
Yep.
they may say, we'll take our chances because the thing looks in great shape. And as long as people don't bang into it with backhoes, it stays in good shape. That's how that works.
Yeah, okay. And if they don't, then they would come in for an amendment to the OOC.
Yeah, I think that would work fine. And then I have
Okay.
one final question. You have a couple of catch basins there, and you said you're not doing any infiltration because everything is pervious surfaces. Why do we need the catch basins? For the
So-
rainstorm that's hot?
So that area drain, it's, if you can see, I think it's 103, that's kind of west of the gate. We want an area drain there to prevent runoff from one side of the gate from kind of collecting and pooling at that gate post. That's why we have that one area drain there. And then we have 2 area drains shown where the gravel path goes to the bridge, kind of in the center of the project. And those are there because to avoid pond, because that's kind of a gravel, so kind of to avoid that channelized flow that's in the cobblestone swale from kind of going up into the gravel and creating some kind of line of erosion. In the gravel, we'd rather just pick it up, because there has been some ponding in the past in that gravel path area. Just over time as it kind of changes and the gravel kind of deteriorates away. So we're gonna kind of like replenish that gravel there. And then where we have it outletting is just, there's a area drain that's just open bottom. So it's really just to prevent erosion at the gravel path. And then that open bottom area drain will infiltrate whatever it can and then bubble up at grade and continue to flow down towards the brook.
Just a little more context there. The 2 catch basins near the footbridge and the ponding that to prevent the ponding that occurs there, that has actually been an issue in the past where it will pond and then freeze in the winter, and you'll get just like a sheet of ice across that bridge. So we're hoping to alleviate some of that ponding with those catch basins, as Jess mentioned.
Right, and it's just because you had so much gravel out there, I just want to make sure that there was some kind of sump, because if you have simply drop inlets, the gravel could theoretically get into the drop inlet and then right into the brook. So,
Yeah.
and there's no dredging of the brook being proposed, I assume.
No.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, we have a 24-inch sump below our.
Oh, okay, then that's fine.
And then yeah, no, that's a great point. And the open bottom actually has a large, like that one open bottom where it'll overflow out of has a larger sump.
Yep.
Of up to 4 feet. And then there's a catch basin proposed in Walter Street because we're changing, water currently kind of goes towards. So that's just a new BWSC catch basin that'll connect into the drain line in Walter.
Right. The drain line owned by one of us, that's all. All right, I know that's all the questions I had. Jim.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Conan?
Thank you, Chair Parker. I don't know why Commissioner Sullivan is so impatient. Why can't we wait for 2,000 years? Well, I think we'll all be here, right? So I had a broader question, but because there's new pathway being created, what is the impact on the current plantation or with vegetation?
So the new pathway within the Arboretum is actually a restoration of a pathway that's just been buried over time by needle duff and soil, and it has been narrowed over time. So we're actually restoring the pathway slightly narrower than it would have been originally, and looking to vegetate the areas around the pathway that are right now really compacted because people just travel over them on foot. So delineating the pathway, exposing the gutters, and adding some small site improvements, things like boulders or logs that could help redirect people from taking desire lines and just trampling the riverfront area, is the strategy for revegetating this area, which, as I mentioned, now is largely degraded, and you just see a lot of sheet flow right off of that towards the brook. So we're looking to green up as much of that non-hardscape area as possible, decompact what's there now, and plant it out with, species that'll be suitable for this area.
That sounds good. Decompacting and then planting new vegetation to green the space. And why avoid desire lines? Because they're harmful to the vegetation?
The desire lines, yes, they're absolutely harmful to the vegetation, and they're pretty unsightly. They create a lot of compaction without regard to tree roots, which is a major issue that we try to avoid. So, through good design, it's showing people better ways to travel and keeping them off of the vegetated areas. Even putting up simple rope fencing, like we've done in other areas, for a few years or permanently, can really help with this type of thing, and just really educating people that, hey, don't walk all over this because there's a tree under here that's trying to get water and oxygen.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, with proper guidance, people will follow the right directions, but sometimes people are also trying to show what works better for them by creating the desire lines, right? So there are some lessons there. But the Japanese knotweed is, of course, extremely worrying, and it's everywhere. What is your method for eliminating that?
We don't actually have that on this site. So that was just an example that I brought up.
I see.
Fortunately, most of the knotweed in the Arboretum is in Bussy Brook Meadow, and we work with the Parks Department on trying to eliminate as much of that as possible. That's an urban wild and much kind of less manicured than the Arboretum proper. Where we do have knotweed, it's not really in wetland areas. It's more upland, and I believe we cut that back and then do stem treatments, I think, like stem painting, and it has to be carefully timed, as you probably know.
All right. Okay. And the ponding that I think just maybe you referred to it. And so you've seen evidence of ponding, and that's where you're trying to landscape in a way the ponding can be avoided in the future, and also the storm drains are located there?
Yeah, certainly by infiltrating more water at the surface, we'll have less runoff to the area where the ponding happens. And then just with the general regrading of the project, we'll be eliminating that low point before the bridge, where the ponding usually happens. And then lastly, the catch basins, of course, will catch any water that might be directed towards that general area.
Mm-hmm. So with this project, the overall impact on Bussy Brook would be less, more, same?
Oh, we hope much less, because Bussy Brook is facing a slew of challenges upstream due to development, and just the amount and speed of stormwater that comes through that culvert into the Arboretum. And over the last 100 years, it's basically totally degraded the once built up granite walls of the stream in this in this area. So, we've been engaging the Office for Green Infrastructure and the city on hopefully trying to create a long-term plan for some restoration of Bussy Brook, but that's outside the scope of this project for sure.
Okay, but still within the Arboretum for another time.
Hopefully it's another time soon. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to this project. That's all, Chair Parker.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I have just one question, which isn't really, well, the question is, why are the construction vehicles from Faulkner parking there?
Well, it's open street parking, and if you if you have more information than I do, please let me know. But I've been dealing with this headache for the last couple of years. I wasn't part of the IMP process for that project, but I suspect that there was never a good parking plan in place for that project, and it's basically spilled out into the surrounding neighborhood, and in fact, all the way down Bussy Street. So, we've worked with BTD to get signage along Bussy to at least limit the hours people can park, so that there could be some enforcement. I'm putting in 311 requests every week on my phone, telling all my friends and coworkers to do the same. And we're looking forward to a time when, the parking will be opened up once again. But I've certainly learned that with these large IMP Article 80 projects, you have to pay very close attention to where people are going to be parking.
Okay, and you think that, and I'm absolutely in favor of the suggestions that are included in this proposal, and really commend you and your staff and the Arboretum for doing them. But I'm hoping that as they go forward, somebody is paying attention to making sure that as you're beautifying it and bringing it back to what it was, you are also paying attention to all these unwanted vehicles that seem to be parking on your property.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of my job, and we're always strategizing about better ways to engage the city on this. And I'll just quickly mention, without going on for too long, that we're really hoping to see the city make some major renovations to Bussy Street to add ADA parking and actual striped spaces, actual granite curbs, and potentially even meters and signage. Because right now it's a bit of a Wild West out there, and it's not friendly or usable for our visitors, or anyone else who's using the parking along Bussy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was my question, and you've answered it really well. And I hope you're successful in getting 311 to respond.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Elena, I don't see any hands up. Any emails?
I don't see any hands or emails. And Commissioner Sullivan, I can also, when I email Danny tomorrow, I can also just include a reminder for the DCR memo to make sure that we have that on file and also get that to you.
Yeah, fine.
Great. Okay. So with that, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions with the revisions that we discussed during the hearing.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Okay, thank you. That was a great presentation. I now know what needle duff is. And I also know what to call when I abruptly change subjects, thanks to Jess. That's interrupting myself. So.
Thank you all so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number unassigned, Boston file number unassigned from GEI Consultants on behalf of the City of Boston Planning Department for the proposed reconstruction of a timber boardwalk surrounding Dry Dock 2 at Shipyard Park in the Charlestown Navy Yard located at 8th Street, Charlestown, Mass. The resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank, 100-foot buffer to land under ocean, and 25-foot waterfront area. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Yes, hi. I'm Dolores Fazio from the Capital Construction Team, Real Estate Division, City of Boston Planning Department. And with me is Dan Robbins from GEI Consultants. our design team on the project. Ian?
Good afternoon or evening here. Dan Robbins with GEI. Thank you, Commissioner and Commission, for hearing us this evening. This project is to reconstruct the timber boardwalk that surrounds Dry Dock number 2 within the Charlestown Navy Yard. This boardwalk was initially constructed in the 1980s. It's a timber boardwalk that sits in between a set of crane rails that used to be the active craneway for the shipyard here around this dry dock. And it's used heavily by the public, and over recent years has really become a major maintenance item for the city. And so through inspections and these design efforts here, we're looking to basically reconstruct this timber boardwalk to maintain access that will be safe for the public to enjoy the waterfront around Dry Dock 2 in the Shipyard Park here in Charlestown. Next slide. So the area that we're working within is basically the 25-foot waterfront area adjacent to the coastal bank, as well as land subject to coastal storm flowage. The area is all impervious, and there's no vegetation that is really within this area. However, you know, what we're going to be looking to do within this, through the investigations, we've identified that there are a number of catch basins that are underneath the timber boardwalk here, so that have likely not been maintained for a period of time. So as part of this project, we'll be looking to, you know, clean those out and reactivate them within the system, as well as basically remove all of the existing timber, reconstruct it, and place new timber back in place. The area highlighted in yellow is the basic arrangement of the area that will be getting reconstructed. Next slide. So the existing boardwalk sits in between the crane rails, as I had mentioned. It's elevated off of an asphalt floor that extends down into some catch basins. We anticipate that there are about 20 catch basins underneath this timber boardwalk. And currently the material that is used is primarily for the decking is an Ipe decking. Here, we're looking to maintain that character with our new project. You'll see within these slides, as well as the next couple of slides, that adjacent to the crane rail, there is a bit of a gap that becomes a tripping hazard. So we'll be looking to infill that while still maintaining the crane rail at the surface there to help maintain some of the public safety. Next slide. So overall conditions, currently, these are a couple of existing condition views. You can see the, you know, we're seeing some sagging and water ponding within the deck itself. Next slide. There are areas, quite a few areas where there's end rot adjacent to the crane rails. And then there's loose boards. There's been some areas of patching. This was a board that was just loose and we were able to pick right off during one of our inspections here. Underneath it, you can see that there's a number of stringers and supports, as well as areas of debris that have just accumulated. We'd be looking to clean all of that off down to the asphalt surface through this project as well. Next slide. This is an area where we've got one of the catch basins. We did a bit of invasive investigation to really kind of identify what we had going on underneath the deck here. So we actually removed this. There are a number of these planks that really, these are areas that have a lot of loose planks associated with them from the existing structure. And you can see that they've got catch basins there. Again, we're looking to really kind of clean this up and clean out those catch basins within this. The new construction, which I'll get into in a couple of moments, will have a bit of an easier way to be able to remove these overhead concrete or portions here and be able to really place them back in as a panel there. So the city will be able to maintain the catch basins more regularly. Next slide. We understand that the project area is large here and that it also has a significant amount of foot traffic, primarily in the summertime. So we're looking to phase this project into 4 different phases. Within that, we'd basically start over by Pier 4 and the MBTA ferry, which actually is going to be kind of broken into 2 phases to maintain access through the for the ferry throughout the entire construction there, but then move from phase 1 to phase 2, really kind of eliminating an area that has a lot of population during the summertime. Our goal would be to do that work prior to next summer and then move on to phase 3 and phase 4 following that throughout the spring and summer of 2025. Next slide. So as you can see, the proposed construction is very similar with the varying elevations of the underdeck here. We're looking to use a concrete, an unreinforced concrete stringer that basically runs along underneath the timber boardwalk to help support and be able to accommodate the varying elevations. And then the timber would be connected to a timber nailer that would be Greenheart. The decking would be all Ipe decking, and then infill adjacent to the crane rails, really eliminating that tripping hazard around the crane rails themselves. For the catch basins, we're looking to have a removable cover associated with those, and the removable cover will basically be able to unbolt and take off that entire panel so you can clean off the catch basins on a more routine basis. Next slide. This slide here shows 2 of the adjacent areas at Pier 6 and Pier 7. This is really what we're looking to replicate with the work around dry dock number 2. This is all Ipe decking that has been run, directly adjacent and replaced a lot of the prior decking that was here. So we'd look to really carry what we're seeing in a lot of the other portions of Shipyard Park and the Charlestown waterfront throughout the dry dock number 2. With that, I will turn it back over to the commission for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. Okay, couple quick questions. When you were investigating the subsurface, did you run into any habitat?
No, we did not run into any habitat within our subsurface investigations.
What I am getting at is the maintenance, emptying of the trash barrels. I think maybe the trash barrels might be compromised because when you start to do this work, I think you're going to find you have a rodent problem that you're going to need to control. So I do know that the order of conditions, we have a perpetual maintenance condition, and that would include emptying the trash barrels around the harbor walk there. As far as the wood itself, what are you going to be doing with the wood that you remove? It's going to be recycled. Where's it going?
Yeah, so the wood that's removed is there's a lot of dry rot that's associated with it. We anticipate that is likely just going to be sent to a landfill.
Okay. Okay. Has it been treated? Will it have to be sent to a landfill that handles slightly hazardous materials, or is it just regular construction?
Yeah, so the deck of it is an Ipe deck that is not treated. The under deck, there's some potential that some of that will need to go to a landfill.
Okay. Okay. As far as controls to make sure that none of the debris or work materials or the materials being used to put the deck back on, how are we going to prevent any of that from getting into the harbor?
Yeah, so our anticipation for that is that we will have a screen, basically a fence on the water side there to help prevent any material from entering into the water.
Okay. Any other controls?
That's really the primary control. We'll also have some wattles.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was getting at. Okay, thank you. Just want to remind members of the public, if you want to make a comment, you can raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Okay, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Sullivan to ask you about the catch basins.
Yeah, when I looked at the cross section, they look to be more like drop inlets. And do you know how are they chained together and have one outlet, or does each structure have its own outlet into the dry dock?
Yeah, we don't believe that they have their own single outlets going into the dry dock. We believe that they are chained together.
And do we know where they go?
We do not know where they go right now.
Well, you don't show us something maybe that you don't know, so you just showed it without one. But at least the last structure before an outlet has to have a sump, so that if anything gets in it, including a gas spill or anything, if someone has a truck going up down there, we can capture it in a structure before it would simply flow out to the harbor. So I think we need to get that investigated as to how those things actually operate. My assumption is BPDA owns them, or planning owns them, or whatever we're calling them. Is that correct? Are they the ones going to be maintaining these basins?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be,
Yeah.
that would be correct.
Right. So I think we need to understand how they work, what's really going on, and where is the outlet. Easy to find. You simply throw some dye in one of them, and when you see the harbor turn green at a spot, that's where it comes out. But we really need to understand what's going on with that whole structure. You may have record plans of it also, but
We have reviewed some of the record plans, and there isn't great information on kind of where they ultimately land. But happy to, review that and discuss with BPDA further.
yeah, I just, and then if we can find the last place to go, see if we have some kind of sump and a trap that we would be able to trap anything that would inadvertently get in them, just for the future. And also during your deconstruction efforts. That's all I had.
That's it? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Conan.
Thank you, Chair Parker. So Dan, did you say that there is great information or isn't great?
Is not.
information? Is not. And does the planning department have an exhaustive list of
The
present-
information that we've
complex?
got right now is for the Timber Boardwalk itself. This was originally a property that was constructed by the Navy. And so we've done some record research at the National Park Service as well, trying to identify any additional pieces of information here.
Whoops.
Dolores, I don't know if you had something to add there or.
Just that, yeah, I accompanied Dan to the National Park Service file room, and we checked there, not very much available. The dry dock was built before World War II, and there just seems to be a gap in records. But certainly we can follow up on John's suggestion to trace the stormwater discharge. Certainly we
Like
can.
with a dye or something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the catch basins, I mean, where you remove the planks and you can see the catch basin, is it exactly where the catch basins are located that the planks are the most ruined?
No, it's not specific to the catch basin locations. There's a number of locations sporadic in nature.
I see. So that was just a coincidence then.
It was, and that there are a number of areas where these apparent catch basins are that do have deteriorated planks. My sense is that they may have been removed a couple of times, and so the fasteners have kind of failed in there.
Right. Do you feel that cleaning the catch basins is going to be enough?
We hope that that will be able to provide additional drainage underneath the structures here, and we do think that will be enough. We haven't seen any items where we're seeing flooding or retention of water underneath the structure that's come over to the deck.
You haven't seen
I was just going to say on that point, I can tell you last year we had pretty rainy summer, and there was a fair amount of ponding over in the area on the east side towards Shipyard Park. It was pretty frequent last year. I assume that's near one of the catch basins that you depicted there.
And is that because the catch basin was blocked?
See, that could be. So some cleaning is definitely in order.
Okay. And you could see that, right? That's what I'm getting at. All right. I mean, there's a suspicion here, but did you have proof? Did you see that the catch basin was blocked?
We have not investigated every catch basin. Here we tried to selectively remove a couple of them in areas that didn't have a lot of public traffic to them when we were removing them. So most of the ones that we were investigating were over on the more the USS Constitution side of dry dock number 2.
I see. Is that the same side that you were referring to, Chair Parker?
Yeah, no, I was referring to the other side. I have the wet sneakers to prove it. But the other issue is during king tides or strong tidal influences, dry dock 2 sometimes it's last year, it actually overtopped once. So I'm wondering if it was a combination of the water level and the catch basins having nowhere to deposit.
On that note, my last question was going to be, I guess I'll ask it, after the repair, the boardwalk will be at the same level it is now, correct?
Correct. The boardwalk will be at the same level that it is right now. We are designing the boardwalk to be able to be inundated. We're not looking to change the elevation of it. Apologize for the
That's okay.
No worries,
It
no worries,
happens.
that's life. Yeah. So meaning it's wet proof? Is that what you mean? To be inundated and then to be back to a state where people can walk on it?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word wet proof necessarily, but it will be able to be overtopped and flooded. And so we'll be designing for the uplift of the dock or the
I
timber.
see. Right. Got it. Thank you. That's all, Chair Parker.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I have a question about, which is maybe procedural. Until we know where these catch basins empty out into, are we prepared to vote? Or would that just be something which would be caught by an order of conditions?
Yeah, that would be something we put in the order of conditions. We're not going to be able to close this hearing tonight anyway, because we don't have a signed DEP file number.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Signed
Okay.
DEP file number. I doubt that they'll be doing the testing within the next 2 weeks. Hopefully, you will have your DEP file number by then. But yeah, that would be something we put in the order of conditions.
Yeah, because I guess, I mean, I'm again repeating what has already been said by both of my colleagues, but it seems to me that it's really important to know where they go. And I'm going to be interested in hearing that. So I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Elena, I don't see any hands up. Do you?
I do not see any hands up either, and nothing in the inbox.
Okay, so with that, thank you very much for the presentation. And clearly, as someone who lives very close to this, I'm very excited to see this happen. But unfortunately, we can't move you along tonight until you get the DEP file number. Have you made calls to DEP? Is there a backlog or?
We have followed up with DEP there, and we'll do again. So I understand, that we're not able to progress forward tonight. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for an extension to the original order of conditions issued for DEP file number 0061607 for the exhumation, analysis, and removal of 66 burials from the quarantine cemetery located on Gallops Island. Resource areas are Barrier Beach, Barrier Beach, Coastal Bank, Coastal Dunes, Coastal Beach, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Who's here on behalf of the applicant? Wendy, you're muted.
Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay, it's my headphones. I apologize. My name is Wendy Pearl. I'm the Director of Cultural Resources for DCR's office, Director of Office of Cultural Resources for DCR. I'm kind of the pinch hitter project manager for this project. It was undertaken by our staff archaeologist who retired in the middle of the project or shortly after, during COVID, in fact. So I'm kind of picking up where she left off and trying to get the project wrapped up. Should I just go ahead into the slides?
Sure, please do.
Okay, if you could advance the slide, please. So thank you for your time tonight. I just wanted to show you some background information on this project, which was carried out between 2019 and 2021. The original order of conditions was issued in 2018. This was a project to exhume and reinter burials from the Gallops Island Quarantine Cemetery, which had been exposed following Hurricane Sandy in 2012. And the work was actually completed under a grant from the federal government because of the impacts from that hurricane. We expected to exhume 66 burials, only 57 were actually recovered. They were identified whenever possible, reinterred at Mount Hope Cemetery in Hyde Park. And the project called for backfill with the gravel burrow from the site, a geotextile, and a seed mix as a temporary stabilization measure. And it also included a recommendation for a planting plan to stabilize the top of the coastal bank. That work to stabilize the bank through plantings did not happen because the season closed after the work was done. We were unable to do it. It was just the wrong season to do it. So we didn't do it. And then COVID hit. We got an extension during COVID, and now we still have found ourselves without a planting plan ready to go, and the season is going to be closing on us as well. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. DCR will be asking for an extension because of that planting requirement. But as you'll see in these following slides, the vegetation is actually recovered naturally in a pretty amazing way. So I wanted to just kind of take you through time on what the site looked like over the past 5 years or so. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the site in 2020. You can see that there's a very dynamic coastal situation here. The cemetery is located upland of this site in that kind of meadowy area, and it is this eroding bank where some of those burials were exposed during the hurricane. Next slide, please. Just another view of the same site. Next. This shows some of that fabric being laid down in the cemetery after the work was complete. Next. These are photographs from 2022 where you can see we're still mowing on top of the cemetery. That's to prevent woody growth from kind of interfering with the cultural site. But you can see the top of the coastal bank recovering despite the very active wave action on the lower portion of that bank. Next slide, please. Just another view from that upland side, 2022. Next. These photographs are from last week. And what was really surprising to me is this place has never looked better. The vegetation really has filled in quite nicely. You can still see that there's a lot of wave energy being directed at the lower part of that bank. But the recovery of the vegetation, even just from the simple seed mix that was put down as a temporary stabilization measure, has been really remarkable. I spoke with our coastal ecologist and shared these photographs with him, and he was really impressed with what he was calling the success of the important succession pioneer species, including seashore dropseed, which is a low-growing perennial grass. It spreads by rhizomes and creates a nice web that's very strong underneath the soil there. He also gave me a statistic that I'd like you to consider as well, which is that even in inland restoration projects, we see a mortality rate of native plants of about 65% due to wind burn, apparently. And he would expect in this kind of environment that mortality rate would actually increase. He said in looking at these photographs, we might want to consider not disturbing this ecosystem and this landscape for the purposes of putting new plants in, because he feels that what's growing there now is actually achieving that goal. So I would ask that, although we're here for the extension of the order of conditions, perhaps we could also consider whether the naturalized landscape has actually succeeded in stabilizing the top of the coastal bank, and whether a planting project would improve that or not. Next photograph, please. You can see some of those plants that we're talking about, even growing in the area that is still very actively eroding. Next slide. This is a view from that upland area where there is a really rich mix of plants. Next, please. And just some details of some of those plants. And I think that's the next slide is just a thank you. Thank you to the staff for coming out to the island last week.
Okay, thank you. Is that our staff?
That's your staff.
Fantastic. Wow, what a place to have a site visit. Great.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day.
Yeah, wow. Okay, thank you. So thank you, Wendy. So I am wondering, you're asking about a planting regimen to provide further stabilization. We cannot add that to your order of conditions procedurally this evening, but I think, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Pardon me, sorry. The project scope included a planting, some kind of planting plan that was to be determined and to be submitted to the commission. The order of conditions included the regular language about stabilizing the site, but it did not require a specific planting regimen. So this would not be adding anything to the order of conditions. I don't know procedurally how it would work, but I guess from an ecological standpoint, adding plantings and disturbing what's there is not preferred now. So wanted to have a conversation about, do we need an order of conditions extended so that we can do something there? Or would the naturalized vegetation satisfy what was in the original scope, which was to grow plants that would stabilize the coastal bank?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Was someone saying something, Eleanor? No. Okay. Okay. Because what I was going to suggest when I thought that you were talking about an additional plan was exactly the process laid out in the order of conditions. So your question as to that discussion, I think I would defer to staff who are on site and see what their reaction to that is. Eleanor?
Yeah, and I mean, my understanding is that what has been done so far is satisfying the conditions that were in the original permit. So I think that everything seems to be on track with this.
Great. Okay. Okay. Does that help you, Wendy?
I guess I on track in what sense? As in extend and then we would proceed with the planting plan, or extend and then I can apply for a certificate?
I would say that just thinking I think extend and then apply for a COC based on that, if that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Elena, did you have anything else about the extension?
No, didn't have anything else on this. Again, just we really appreciate everybody at DCR who helped coordinate. I know that getting out to the island is not the easiest thing, so thank you again for your time.
You didn't seem to mind though.
No, it was definitely not. It wasn't burdensome. We saw a whale on our way back, actually.
You're kidding me.
No, it was amazing. It was great. It was a great day to be out.
Wow. Okay. Take me on your site visits. Okay. Quick comments from commissioners. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, on the coastal bank, there appeared to be some filter fabric or something, some black in several spots. Is that part of your work, that filter fabric? And if we were to extend it, should we wait and see if that area gets planted naturally? Or what was that?
That is filter fabric, you're right. That is eroding out of that very dynamic bank. And generally we would success in planting that bank. We are working with the Park Service to look at ways to protect the islands for the long term. I don't know what the solution would be there. The seawall is not functioning the way it should. I don't know what kind of solution would be there, but I think it would probably be beyond basic plantings.
Yeah, because I'm just, if that were in the original order, that area, and you were looking to stabilize it originally through plantings, but we're finding now it can't be. Is that filter fabric something you put down under this job?
The filter fabric was put down at what was the top of the coastal bank, and it was the top of the coastal bank that this project impacted. It did not impact the lower portions of that, the cobble dune and the beach. So those were not subject to, the order of conditions didn't apply to those lower areas because they weren't in the area of impact. So we were talking about planting the top of the coastal bank, which is really that top edge where the tall grasses are growing.
Right.
So that has receded. So you're seeing the geotextile fabric come out of the slope because the ocean took a bite out of that slope.
Right. All right. No, that was just my comment. I don't know what the solution is, whether we just continue this and take a peek at it next year to say we continue having erosion and that's what we're gonna lose the island because we don't have protection or whatever. I'm not sure what we do with the thing, to tell you the truth.
I'm with you.
All right, so there's two confused people on the call.
Okay.
I'm sure with my deep questions, Chairman.
Thank you. I just want to remind members of the public, if you'd like to provide public comment, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Commissioner Conan?
Thank you, Chair Parker. Wendy, I got the impression that you were expressing confidence, maybe based on expert assessment, that the growing vegetation there is helping with avoiding coastal erosion.
It's helping stabilize the top of the coastal bank, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you could, go ahead.
And you know that how?
Well, our coastal ecologist, who's worked for DCR for 15 years or more, I can't remember exactly, he looked at the types of plants that are growing there, and he was talking about one plant in particular that spreads by rhizomes. So those underground kind of networks of tubers that create like a mat. And he felt that that was a really good sign of a kind of recovering landscape for that top of the coastal bank. The areas where we see that gravel eroding, that was not part of the project area, and the changes that are happening there are completely natural. So we've never contemplated, as part of this project, putting plants in any area other than the top of the coastal bank at the edge of that meadow that I was showing you. The meadow is the cemetery.
Right, I understand. So I'm just not sure what natural means in the context of erosion anymore, because one could argue whether climate change is natural or not. I don't think it is, but that's going to cause a lot of wave action here, and maybe more than wave action. And so if the top is protected, but then the rest of it isn't and continues to erode, then I'm not sure how it's going to work in the long run here. But it's really good to hear about the rhizome. What's the species you said? It's interesting too.
It's the seashore drop seed, the perennial grass.
Drop seed. Right. And was that in the seed mix that was used earlier?
I don't believe so. I don't think it was.
So it showed up on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but it overall seems like the rhizome. I understand that is a good thing to see because it'll hold soil together. And that it seems like overall it's a positive lesson, and I'm curious to see some article or something about how this has helped, and maybe others can take some hope from this and try similar things. But good to see this. Thank you for sharing. That's all, Chair Parker.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds like we need Phragmites out there.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Sullivan.
Sounds like we need some Phragmites in their rhizomes out there. The toughest thing in the world.
That'll solve it.
Okay.
I have a question. So if we extended the order of conditions, what is it exactly that DCR would be doing there?
I guess I would continue to consult with the Conservation Commission staff about the types of plantings that are there, and if those are satisfactory in terms of the original intent of planting that area. And then with their recommendation, I would come back here and ask for a certificate of compliance.
Okay, so I guess let me see if I can ask the question slightly differently. So is there any further planting that DCR either thinks needs to be done for the top, which was, I guess, the only part of the original order of conditions? Or is there something else that you would do with regard to the top, which is where the cemetery was?
Given our coastal ecologist recommendation, I think we would not disturb that landscape. I could talk with him about creating some management guidelines so that regular operation on the island would not disturb that landscape. The island is closed, so we used to mow the cemetery to keep it open so people could kind of walk through there. There was a pavilion at the top of the hill. It is not being mowed now, so we could make some management changes, but the coastal ecologist is saying what you have there is working. Disturbing that landscape to put new plants in is risky, and the survival of native plants in that environment may be quite low.
So I think what I'm understanding is that the original order of conditions applied just to the top of that area that you showed us, and that it is now being taken over, if that's the right phrase, by native species which are doing what they do, and that without respect to that DCR doesn't plan to do anything about the lower aspects of the island where the black fabric is and where the erosion is occurring.
I can only answer what is planned within my framework, which is the cultural resource piece of it. This was undertaken as a cultural landscape preservation project. I don't know what the agency has planned larger for that coastal front. I know that the Park Service, as our partner for the Boston Harbor Islands, because they are state park and a national recreation area, we work with them on some of these larger projects. There is a soil remediation project that's going to come before this commission. So there is activity around solving some of these problems, but they are much more long-term than the cemetery project was ever intended to be. So I can't really answer the question. If it's necessary, I can get answers for you and come back.
Well, all I'm trying to understand is extending the order of conditions doesn't seem like that is going to result in any further activities with respect to the island, because DCR has determined that through your expert that what's going on at the top of the area where the cemetery was is exactly right. And you don't either have any jurisdiction, or I'm not sure how to describe it, for any other part of the island. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that would be accurate. For this project, the area that you're concerned about was outside of the project area.
Oh, okay, so extending the order of conditions, I guess, is what I'm saying, without, I mean, if you were to come back to us and do what you're suggesting, which is to show what the plants are there now, and have an end to this project, that is what would be the most desired by DCR. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you. Elena, I don't see any hands raised. Do you see any emails?
No, I don't see either.
Okay. So with that, I would entertain a motion to extend the order of conditions for 3 years.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan.
I don't understand. So we're going to extend it so that they can come in and ask for it to be transferred. Okay.
No, yeah, they still have to consult with staff.
Okay, I get you. All right, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Okay, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
There's been a few continuances. Continued our notice of intent for DEP file number 0061961 and Boston file number 2023-051, and also notice of intent for DEP file number 0061996 and Boston file number 2024-021. We'll now begin our regular meeting. First item on the agenda is the ever-present request for certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061774 and Boston file number 2021-012 for the demolition of a residential building and construction of a new multifamily residential building located at 839 Saratoga Street in East Boston. Resource areas land subject to coastal storm flowage. Eleanor?
We have not received any new information about this, so we would recommend holding off on a vote.
Moving on. Do you have any administrative updates?
We do not.
Okay, last item, well, can you call it the last item on the agenda because the meeting minutes are not ready. So the real last item on the agenda is a motion by acclamation to adjourn.
Yes.
Objections?
Oh.
Great. Thank you very much. And we'll see everybody in a few weeks.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all. Have a good
Night.
night.